check in. See those things on the table with the QR code? Point your phone at that and let the Kauffman Foundation know that we have a lively and thriving 1 Million Cups chapter here in Albuquerque. And that will let us know, let them know that we're grateful for all their support. Okay, here's our mission. Our mission is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all new and aspiring entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is a difficult journey. Marty and I were just having a conversation about that. So if you're an entrepreneur, tell us how many years into it you are, and that's how hard we'll turn up the stories, right? We'll use the easy stories if like you're only a year or two into it, and if you're 4 or 5 years into it, you get it unvarnished. All right, you have to sign an NDA, but otherwise we'll be glad to talk to you.
Lying to people all.
Lying to people about how difficult it is, or lying to people about how easy it is?
How we'll disseminate the information.
Well, I will, but your lips are sealed. Okay, so don't talk to Miriam, just enjoy the creamer. All right, so we work toward this mission of facilitating entrepreneurship by creating a consistent program across all instances of 1 Million Cups. And the Kauffman Foundation trains us in how to train the presenters. So wherever you go, when you go to 1 Million Cups, you'll find the format similar, the presentation similar, and remarkably, the questions similar. So every community is unique, and we have our own strengths, and we take advantage of that. So here's the story about why we're the top chapter in New Mexico. We achieved that through a low denominator. There are other chapters scattered throughout the Southwest. You know, those are all fun. I've been to a couple of these in person, and as I say, if you go, you'll find the format and questions familiar. So here are our key pillars. These are presentations, not pitches. And in pitches, and I know some of you are familiar with that, your company is an amazing opportunity. It has the perfect team, it has the perfect product, it has the vision, the passion, the people. It only lacks large amounts of money. And you know, so that's one kind of presentation, and some of us have done those. The other kind of presentation is here, where you say, look, I'm not really a business person, I don't really know what I'm doing, I have some big holes in my understanding of things, and I need some help from the community. So that's what you do in a 1 Million Cups presentation. You open it up a little bit, you say, these are my vulnerabilities, these are my blind spots, these are the things that I need, and I'm asking for help. So that's how to do a 1 Million Cups pitch, and on the audience side of it, please be helpful. So these are real connections, even if you're not one of the presenters. You see people talking and finding out, you know, what they know and what they're doing and what's up, and that's really important. And personally, I've gotten a lot of momentum for my own business from those kind of casual conversations that have occurred month after month in the years since we've been doing 1 Million Cups. So we're run for the community, by the community. All of our organizers are volunteers. We all get something big out of it. You can talk to me about what I've gotten out of it. And we're radically and intentionally inclusive. We like all kinds of people. If you're an entrepreneur, that's pretty rare. It's about 3 to 5% of the population has the personality necessary to be an entrepreneur. And so if you identify as an entrepreneur, you're rare, and we're glad to meet you, and we're going to be helpful to you. And that doesn't matter whether it's a mom and pop brick and mortar operation, a whiteboard company that's got a little bit of funding, somebody that's well on the way, or people that have really made it and coming here to show us how it's done. All of those folks are welcome here. Please be polite, please be helpful. And that's what we're saying here. This is an educational environment. Be friendly, be polite, share what you know, try to figure out what you don't know, and let's lift up entrepreneurship together. Okay, it's easy to present now that you've heard all that. If you have a for-profit business, defined as a business that sells goods or services for more than it costs to produce them, and you've sold something to someone who's not your mom, you're welcome to present. And we'd prefer that you've been in business for 5 years or less, but organizers are allowed to violate that rule, and I've presented after 5 years. Because, you know, COVID took off 2 years, so you can subtract 2 years from whatever you're doing. So we'll assign you a coach, and we'll try to make you look your best in front of the 1 Million Cups audience. Here's our organizing team. I'm Paul Sutter. We have Lisa Atkins. Eric Brenz-Whitmore is probably watching us online. Danielle, who's here. Sonia, probably watching online. And Keiko and Oscar, either editing video or watching us online. It's a pleasure to thank our sponsors. Fat Pipe, for 10 years, has given us a free place to have these meetings. This wouldn't have been possible without them. And, you know, one of these days I'd like to add up the economic impact of 1 million cups over the 10 years. And I think that it's a pretty large number. And we can't pay it back, but we can pay it forward. Thank you, Lisa. So dry heat photography is making us look good and trying to bring in more people. More than organized, Miriam Ortiz-Pino, organizing your stuff, your thoughts, and providing creamer. Foundation for Sustainable Living, giving us the caffeine that keeps us rolling. Noventum, custom software development, software that doesn't suck. And donuts. Minuteman Press for all your ink on paper needs. Thanks for joining us, and I'm going to hand it off to Danielle. You can have both of these things.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited about this next presentation. So several years ago, I was actually being treated for Lyme disease, and I had a doctor tell me that I should seek out an upper cervical chiropractor, and there was not one available in my area, hundreds of miles away. And so it's really exciting to have this now brought to New Mexico. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Olivia Gurule Ritemann.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Olivia Gurule Ritemann. I am a doctor of chiropractic, and I am trained and certified specifically in the Blair upper cervical chiropractic technique. My husband and I opened Enchantment Upper Cervical Chiropractic last year, and like Danielle said, I'll get into a little bit more detail of why we decided to open here in New Mexico, but the main driving force was that this is not something that was available to the entire state before we moved in, and it's very important that the citizens of New Mexico have access to this type of care, and I'll tell you why. So today I want to talk about who we are as individuals and as our business, how we got here, how we got into chiropractic in general, and how we opened our business here in Albuquerque. How we can help using the upper cervical chiropractic technique that we use, the type of people that are going to benefit most from this type of care, and where we're going, our goals for the future, challenges that we're facing, that kind of thing. So personally, my journey into chiropractic was a very a scary journey. I had always decided that I wanted to be on the rehab side of the healthcare system, so I was planning to become a physical therapist and athletic trainer. I was on track to do that in my last year of undergrad, and I had never once considered chiropractic, never been to a chiropractor before. My husband had been under care pretty much his whole life, but it had never crossed my mind that wasn't something that I wanted to do. My last semester of college, I was sitting in a calc class, and all of a sudden, just completely out of nowhere, developed a really horrible migraine. And the scariest part of it was that my vision completely blurred and I could barely see anything. So I left class early, I took a Tylenol and I went to bed, and it went away. The problem was that migraine kept coming back at the same time every single day, and eventually, about a week later, the migraine came on, and no matter what I did, it didn't leave. So the scariest part about all this was that I had lost pretty much all of my peripheral vision during this time, and I had blind spots in both eyes. I ended up kind of getting tossed around by the medical system in the city that I was at, going through all of the different neurological tests, blood work. I even had a spinal tap. They thought it was meningitis, they thought it was diabetes, they thought it was everything, and everything came back normal and negative. And basically the consensus was, we don't know what's wrong with you, but at the rate you're going, you will be completely blind by the end of the year, and there's nothing we can do to fix that because we don't know what's wrong. During this time, I was also having some really horrible neck pain at the same time, and so my husband, who was my fiance at the time, he was like, we need to get you in to see a chiropractor to at least help with the headaches and the neck pain. So after looking around, luckily he found somebody that specialized in a technique that focused really heavily on the upper cervical spine. And when I say upper cervical, a lot of the time people will say oh, so only women can come see you. No, that's not the case. We're talking about the cervical spine. So upper cervical is specifically talking about the C1, C2 vertebrae sitting directly under the base of the skull. So this chiropractor analyzed me, took the proper imaging, everything, and determined that I had a pretty significant misalignment in my C1 vertebrae under the base of my skull. He adjusted me. I was really terrified to get adjusted. I'm sure everybody's seen the ridiculous videos on YouTube and TikTok, and they're really scary, but his technique was very different. So I went home, kept going back to see him, and after my 4th adjustment, I woke up the next day and my vision was completely back to normal. So I stuck with that, and everything has, been getting better since. At this point, I'm kind of on almost like a maintenance thing where I only have to get adjusted a couple times a year. But it really saved my life and my sanity. And it was at that time that I decided, okay, I need to talk to my advisor and see if I can get into chiropractic school instead of PT. And I did. And so the next year, my husband and I packed up and moved to South Carolina, where I finished my 4-year doctorate degree, and we moved back here last year and opened our practice in May. So, who we are as a business, we are family owned and operated. My husband and I own our practice. And the girl there in the yellow, that's my younger sister. She used to run my front desk. Now she's our patient advocate. So she is kind of the liaison between the doctor side of things and then communicating to our patients on a very empathetic level and trying to be that advocate for them. So both of us were born and raised here in Albuquerque, and it was very important to us the entire time that we were in school that we would move back here. Of course, both of our families are here, but the main reason, again, was that this type of care was not available to the citizens of the whole state. And I had a lot of mentors and colleagues in surrounding states that told me that they had several patients driving to see them 5 or 6 hours from Albuquerque. So we knew that this type of care was very drastically needed here. So what sets us apart as an upper cervical office, as well as just our office individually, for the main part is the technique that we use. So like I said, those videos of people getting their necks basically turned around and cracked and people screaming on the table, that's really scary, and that's not what we do. So I practice the Blair upper cervical technique. Again, it's focusing on C1, C2, but the adjustment is done in a very neutral side-lying position. The adjustment is very gentle and precise, and I'll talk a little bit more about the technology that I use to make sure that that adjustment is as specific as possible. Our target markets and ideal patients is also going to be a little different because the type of care that I provide is catered towards those who are dealing with neurological disorders and symptoms. And I'll show you guys kind of what they kind of fall into some main categories. And then the environment of our office. So when I was going through my scary health journey, I was being told constantly that nothing's wrong with you. We don't know what's wrong with you. These tests are coming back negative. And at times I was a victim of a lot of medical gaslighting of this is all in your head, you're stressed out, you're anxious. My favorite one, I was told that I needed to lose weight, all of those things. And since I became a doctor, I knew that people that were coming to see me for similar symptoms were going to have the same past experiences. And so it was very important that our office provided an environment that didn't feel like that scary doctor's office. So specifically with upper cervical chiropractic and chiropractic in general, but mostly when we're dealing with the upper cervical spine, we're dealing with a structural physical misalignment of one bone on the other. When that happens, most people will have some form of a misalignment in their spine. That's not necessarily the issue. The issue comes when our nervous system is no longer able to adapt to that misalignment. So specifically at C1, we're dealing with a lot of anatomical structures that specifically revolve around the autonomic nervous system. So the brainstem, the vagus nerves, those are going to be the main neurological structures that we're concerned with. So if you have a misalignment, most of the time we can adapt to that. Sometimes our body can even perform like a self-correction, and then you don't experience symptoms. The issue is when your nervous system is no longer able to adapt properly. That can lead to degeneration in the nervous system, in the spine, and then later on down the road is when symptoms will appear. So that's what we're concerned with, is not only detecting the structural misalignment, but also performing neurological tests to see how is that misalignment affecting your nervous system. Are you adapting properly? In most cases, people are not, and so that leads to symptoms. So these are some of the technologies that we're using in the Blair upper cervical world. A big issue is, there's a lot of stigma around chiropractic, that it's not evidence-based, and there's a lot of past behavior that leads to that belief, being pretty common. So the upper cervical world is really trying to combat that, and we're doing that through research and evidence-based practices. So the infrared thermography scans, that's what we use on a daily basis with our patients to determine whether or not there is that maladaptation in the nervous system. Specifically, we're looking at temperature differences and temperature dysregulation. That's going to all be monitored by the brainstem and the vagus nerves. So if there is temperature dysregulation within the body, specifically in the neck, that is a good indication to us that there is a misalignment that is causing some kind of nervous system interference. And then we are using cone beam computed tomography imaging, and this is the type of imaging that you'll get at the dentist office, where the machine spins around your head a couple times. This is starting to be adapted and used by upper cervical chiropractors to determine the actual structural misalignment. We can get really specific with this type of imaging, and so we can see everybody's individual anatomy that might, cause us to have to tweak their adjustment a little bit. We can slice down into the 1/4 millimeter and see and measure those misalignments, that we know exactly how much force to use. We measure joint angles using these. That way we can know exactly how to perform the adjustment. So everybody's adjustment is very specific and tailored to them, rather than just the same crack that everybody gets. Lay on the table, crack your neck a couple ways. That's not very specific at all, and sometimes that can lead to more harm than good. So we want to get as specific as possible. Oops. So this is the environment of our office. Like I said, I really didn't want my office to feel like that clinical, sterile environment. I like to think that the only thing that we're really serious about is your level of care and how we provide care. Other than that, our office is very casual and very home-like, because our patients have been kind of tossed around from doctor to doctor. It's very stressful to go into a doctor's office. You guys have probably heard of white coat syndrome, where your blood pressure will spike if you're in a doctor's office. I see that a lot. So it's really important that our office feels very comfortable for our patients. This middle picture here is our resting suite. So it's really important after you receive an upper cervical adjustment to allow that adjustment to kind of settle into place. And so I do require, it's kind of nice, I require a 20-minute nap essentially after each adjustment to help you, help your nervous system adapt to that adjustment, so that when you leave, you're not just getting thrown right back into your stressful life. You are able to continue on and hold on to that adjustment for as long as possible. And then this here is a picture of what that adjustment kind of looks like. So the table is very different. You're laying on your side, and it's depending on which side your misalignment is. And then it's a very quick thrust, and that table will actually drop about 1/4 of an inch to help absorb that impact of the adjustment. So I always chart and categorize each new patient into different categories of why they're coming to see me, so that I can keep track of what people are really seeking upper cervical care for. So for the majority, most of our patients are coming in to see us for some form of pain. Most of the time it's neck pain, but there are instances of shoulder pain, low back pain, head pain that isn't necessarily like a migraine or a headache. So the majority of our patients are seeing us for that. We do have quite a few wellness and maintenance patients that understand that it's important to keep your nervous system functioning as properly as possible, and so most of the time they don't really have symptoms. They just want to make sure that that spine is in alignment before symptoms develop. This yellow here is kind of a small population, but that is primarily like facial issues. So most of the time it's like TMJ issues and trigeminal neuralgia. And then dysautonomia is a big one. So that's a lot of autonomic nervous system disorders such as POTS, mast cell activation syndrome, things like fibromyalgia, a lot of autoimmune diseases. Those respond really, really well to upper cervical care. And then we have quite a few patients that are coming to see us for migraines and vestibular issues like dizziness and vertigo. My target patients are moms, and so the majority of my patients are women that are in some walk of life with motherhood. Most of my female patients do have young children, and it's really important for me to take care of those moms because they're taking care of everybody else. So they kind of get overlooked and they overlook themselves often, and so I really focus on providing an environment where moms can thrive under care so that they can be happy living a stress-free life as much as possible while they're taking care of their family. Most of our pediatric patients are coming to see us for some form of neurological disorders or delays. I see a lot of kids with speech delays that respond really well under care. A lot of kids that have a lot of primitive reflexes that have not been properly integrated, and so that's really beneficial in making sure that their nervous system is adapting properly. So as far as my business is concerned, I do, face a lot of challenges. I think Adam said this last week. I'm extremely passionate about chiropractic, and I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I'm not really trained in how to run a business. So lucky for me, my dad has owned his own business my whole life, so that helps tremendously. And we receive very minimal business training in chiropractic school, which I wouldn't even really call it that. So, on a pretty basic level, bookkeeping is kind of the hardest thing that we struggle with, making sure that we're, keeping everything legal, keeping everything the way that we need to. So that is definitely an area that we are seeing challenges in, and kind of learning as we go and teaching ourselves as we go. Marketing is also a big thing, but our goal essentially in the future is to become a completely referral-based practice. And that is, internal referrals, patients referring friends and family. That's really important to us. But a big thing is creating a network of providers and practitioners that are very congruent with what we're doing, because in my experience in the past year and a half of being, a practicing doctor, patients that are coming to me from referrals of their trusted providers are going to be patients that really, really stick with care and see amazing results, because they're already coming in with a pretty high level of trust in me because they're being referred by somebody that they already trust. The challenge with that is that as an alternative therapy like chiropractic is, it's very easy to be able to build a network with other alternative type providers. So I have a really great network of massage therapists, acupuncturists, even physical therapists, even energy workers, Reiki, all of that. And it's very difficult to get in with more of the allopathic side of things. So neurologists, medical doctors, that is a lot harder to kind of establish that trust and authority within the medical world. Like I said, chiropractic has a pretty big stigma surrounding it, and it's pretty warranted based on past behaviors of the profession. And so that is something that as upper cervical chiropractors we're trying to mediate, but also on an individual level. So that is my goal, and a challenge that I have being here in the state is that it's difficult to get in with more medical providers. So that's something that I would ask of this community is if if you have connections with medical providers, specifically people that deal with a lot of neurological or autoimmune disorders, that I would love connections with those people. So the best way to contact me would be my email. If you want more information about the Blair Chiropractic technique in general, blairchiropractic.com is a really great resource to learn more about that. And then NM Chiropractor is our website. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time.
All right, we'll take questions. If you're in person, come over here, form a line, and then I'll also take questions on Zoom. Just put it in chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you.
Olivia, I have a question. Did you go back to the providers who told you you needed to lose weight and was all in your head and say, here's the solution, maybe you should start referring patients to me?
I didn't. I see a lot of them now on TV, so I don't want to call them out, but that is a good idea because now that I'm back and a lot of the providers, so I was in Dallas at this time, but I was, a college student, so my insurance was here with my parents, so I was having to fly back a lot for all of these tests. So that's definitely a good idea to get in with that.
Sure.
I'm Marilyn with Our Peaceful Path. I have used chiropractors a lot in my life. There are two. One that probably saved my life. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue at the time, and he fixed it. And the second helped me with some serious nerve injuries in my foot. But chiropractors come in all types and sizes and shapes. There's the bone cracker, and there's the kinesiologist and the nutritionist, and it seems like your specialty is just those few nerves in the back of your neck. Can you treat everything through those few nerves?
That's a great question. So the biggest thing with chiropractic is that we're not necessarily treating the specific condition. We're relieving the pressure on the nervous system so that the body can treat and heal itself the way it was designed to do. But I will say with upper cervical chiropractic, we see a lot of compensations below the neck that are really just, compensations for what's happening up here. So I have a lot of patients coming to see me for like hip pain, knee pain, and I always tell my patients, give me 4 visits at the very least of only touching your neck, and let's see what happens. And then after that point, if we determine that those are not compensations structurally, then I do full spine and extremity adjusting as well. But that's a great question. So when the autonomic nervous system is under distress, that is going to lead to a lot of systemic issues, like chronic fatigue. That's a big one. So relieving that pressure can often allow the body to be able to heal itself. So essentially the answer is yes, if the issue is coming from the autonomic nervous system. If we take that pressure off, then other things, throughout the body can heal itself.
I would also recommend going back to those doctors with, I ended up with 3 crushed nerves, and the doctor who did the surgery asked for a list of every doctor I'd ever seen, and he dictated a letter to send to them to say, you misdiagnosed that, and this is how and why. And it was a really good thing to do. So if you just do that letter or something like that, it's powerful. So your referrals come from patients mostly?
Not quite right now. We don't do a whole lot of external marketing. For the most part, we have a really huge advantage that we are the only upper cervical in the state. And so people see things on, I get a ton of patients from TikTok that they see other doctors throughout the country talking about the issues that they have, and they just Google upper cervical, and I'm always like the first one to pop up, no matter where they're at in the state. So that is kind of our marketing right now, but it is, I have noticed within the past few months that it is starting to shift over more into a referral-based practice, which is awesome. And I love that idea because I don't think that doctors are maliciously misdiagnosing patients or ignoring them. Maybe some are, I don't know, but I think a lot of it is just a lack of understanding and knowledge, and so bringing that to light, I'm sure, is very helpful.
It is very helpful, and the way that I've always chosen a chiropractor is I ask around, because if it's a bone cracker, no thank you. Who has the specific skills to fix this? And I only went through referrals. And my own opinion is if you're referred by a medical doctor, you're probably not good enough to get patients on your own. So that's because I'm very suspicious of doctors who, they mean well, but they are trained in a system that doesn't necessarily help the patient.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Heidi Blair is next. Heidi, I've pinned you. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, so I'm so not me personally, but my husband has major migraines. He has lots of migraines. He's had surgery on his lower back, and now he's having issues with his upper neck and stuff. But we're in Las Cruces, so so you're up there in Albuquerque, and we're TRICARE. You don't have anything with TRICARE, do you? I'm sure.
So I believe there might be a doctor in, I don't think there's an upper cervical doctor in El Paso. I think the next closest would probably be in Lubbock. So we are actually not in network with any insurance. We're out of network. It provides us a lot of freedom to be able to treat patients the way that they need rather than being dictated by an insurance company. But I do think I'm probably the closest to you guys.
Probably.
I do have quite a few patients that travel from Las Cruces to see me.
Nice. And then also I was wondering, I believe you said PODS. My daughter has recently received the diagnosis of PODS after being misdiagnosed on several other things. So did I hear that properly?
Yes, so I have quite a few patients with POTS. The way that upper cervical can help with that is because the pressure receptors in the arterial system is going to be regulated by the brainstem. And so if there is miscommunication between the brainstem and the arterial system and the baroreceptors or the pressure receptors, that is going to cause a lot of issues with blood pressure kind of tanking and heart rate dropping during those positional changes. And yeah, I've definitely noticed that POTS is a huge one that goes overlooked. I think it's becoming more of like a, not common diagnosis, but I think a lot of practitioners are now knowing to look for that and to test for that. So I'm glad that she finally was able to receive a diagnosis, because that is the first step in being able to heal, is actually knowing what's wrong. But yes, POTS responds really well to upper cervical care.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
Hi, Paul Sauter with Equiseek. So not really a question, words of encouragement. So we do genetic testing of horses, and a lot of veterinarians who do not yet accept this test, people come in, horses have symptoms, and they say, you're a lousy trainer. So that's the same thing that a lot of patients, including you, got, it's your fault, you're not taking care of yourself, or you're a girl who understands women anyway, you get that stuff, right? But the encouragement is that the way scientific consensus works, everybody kind of thinks the same thing, and then like a flock of sparrows, they all change. So you see that happening in medicine all the time. Look what happened in gastroenterology like 5 years ago. Suddenly it's a branch of psychiatry, right? The vagus nerve is like the superhighway where your brain talks to your organs and they talk back, right? So you're doing fine, do the things you say you're doing, but at some point in the future, there's a possibility of a radical change in the way the medical community looks at your field and says, oh, there was something to this after all. We were wrong, that's a little bit much for them, but this is what we're gonna do now, right? So keep at it and wait for the consensus to change. That's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Comunicaciones, Cocopelli, Clifton Chadwick. Has anybody here ever heard of the book, The E-Myth? Any of the entrepreneurs heard of the book, The E-Myth? So it's a pretty simple, easy read that talks about how you're going to have to do HR and everything. They've, of course, because they're entrepreneurs, turned it into a thing that you can now do. You can be the E-Myth counselor. So I encourage you to go find a really old, used book and not do. The other thing is I have here a contact for a woman who started her medical billing practice for my mom and now has something like 40 clients, and if you'd like, I'll share that information with you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And I want her to come do a presentation, so when you talk to her,
Your mom?
kinda, but no, the woman that started out doing her billing.
Yes, we need her.
Hello, Miriam Ortiz-Pino with More Than Organized. I'm going to hit on the other part, the marketing thing. Have you systematized your referral process, your seeking referral process?
No, and I heard you talking about how you organize more than stuff, so I actually.
Yes, systems. It's all about systems.
Yes.
But that would be great. And then my other suggestion was your storytelling is so good and such a key to it that I think some videos on your website and or maybe a story video, maybe Oscar and Kakoa could help with, that would be just a great overview of what it can do. Does the selling and referring for you?
Sweet. Yeah, I love that idea. Thank you.
Cool.
Hi. So I'm Coco. I'm the founder of Sensiboo, and I make science-based products for babies and their caregivers. Thank you. And so it sounds like we're both in the business of basically selling science-based products. And so I've heard you talk a lot about the need to have relationships with traditional doctors, which makes sense, and I see that too because people really trust their doctors, right? And I've also heard you say that one of your areas of need is to be connected with those traditional doctors. But I was just curious, even just for my own interest, what is your strategy for once you have those connections for cultivating those relationships, kind of clearing out some of that misinformation and bringing that science so that, you know, you and the doctor are on the same page and like on the same team? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's a great question. That's something that I really haven't thought a whole lot about, honestly. I think that kind of explaining like more of our evidence-based practices. The closest that I've gotten is I work pretty hand in hand with a neuromuscular dentist, and he uses a lot of really new technology. So that was a huge thing with him, was explaining like the technology that we're using. So I think that that's probably going to be my main strategy, is showing like, okay, so we're not just like, you know, laying people on the table and cracking their bones and hoping for the best. Like, we are using a lot of evidence-based practice to determine whether this person, first of all, actually needs an adjustment or not, and if that's going to actually help with the condition that they're struggling with. So, but that's definitely something that I need to put more thought into. But yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. Danielle with Conscious Crossroads End of Life Services. So 2 questions. One is, as far as your marketing towards your target audience, right? You want to go after moms specifically. Do you have any idea as to how you can weasel your way in there and just focus on them yet?
So being pretty new in practice, especially for like the first year or so, I was really, really scared to actually market to like my target patients, because everybody was telling me like, you just need to take whoever you can get, which ended me with a lot of patients that really we weren't compatible. What I offered was not what they needed, and so I was just accepting everybody in, and it really, really drained me. So that's when I started marketing a lot more, and I mostly use social media. That's pretty much the only like form of marketing that I'm using right now. My plan for the future for this like upcoming year is to get a lot more like video testimonials from moms in my practice that are thriving, that really love the environment, and I want them to kind of talk more on the environment of our office and how comfortable that feels for them, rather than like the specific care that they're getting. So that's kind of my strategy, is I want other moms to be able to look through my social media, my website, that kind of thing, and see like, oh, well, this mom said that she just brings her toddlers in and they're like, you know, they're comfortable, they're not like having to chase after them and feeling like frazzled and like I'm not welcoming of them or anything like that. So that's kind of my strategy, but definitely open to more suggestions.
Sounds like you've thought about it quite a bit, actually, so that's good. Okay, and the next question is more towards the medical side and what you actually do. And as we're talking through, you know, vagal nerve dysfunction, and I'm thinking polyvagal theory and all of that, with lifestyle changes, can this help somebody that's dealing with chronic anxiety, that is chronically stuck in a sympathetic state?
100%. So anxiety is actually like another huge reason why people come to see me. I probably should add that category in. It tends to be kind of like a subcategory or like symptom or disorder that people are struggling with. Like they're usually coming to see me for neck pain, migraines, or something, and every time I ask them, like, well, do you have an anxiety disorder? Almost 100% of the time they'll say yes. And they are, what's happening essentially is the vagus nerve is sitting directly in front of C1 and C2. C1 kind of has these like little wings that come off, and the vagus nerve is sitting right there. And most of the time, the way that C1 will structurally misalign is it will shift forward on one side or the other. If that happens, it's actually like causing some physical compression of the vagus nerve and the brainstem. So if that is happening, then the body is no longer able to properly regulate itself between fight or flight and that rest and digest state. And you know, that coupled with our society and the way that most people live their lives, people are stuck in a really bad chronic fight or flight almost all the time. So you know, it's not going to be like the cure-all for anxiety just to get the pressure off. There's going to have to be a lot of lifestyle things that that will go hand in hand with that. But I always tell people, like, you know, you can do everything that is like within your control to manage your anxiety. But if that physical component is still there, you're always going to struggle with, you know, that's always going to be a bit of a roller coaster for you. And you can learn like coping tools to manage it. But yeah, it's kind of like a losing battle if we're not getting that physical pressure off of the main nerve that controls your rest and digest system. So you're going to be stuck physically in a fight or flight state no matter what you're doing to kind of manage that outside of the office, basically. So thank you.
Hey, Katie Partridge. I'm a life sciences and healthcare consultant. Really great presentation. I had a question. Have you asked your patients where they get their information? I'm just curious if that would help refine your marketing strategy.
I have not. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking first about like patient support groups. And I know a lot of those are on the national level because it's so easy to connect online, but I'm curious if there's like New Mexico specific patient support groups.
Are you meaning like how they find me, like how they're getting
Or
that
how they
information,
talk
or-
with others,
gotcha.
how they find patients with a similar disease and kind of talk through like what strategies have worked for you, and you know, potentially you could present at one of those if there is a New Mexico-based one. But yeah, I think asking your patients where they're getting their information could help just give you some ideas.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will say I have had that instance where patients tell me that they found me through kind of like a Facebook support group. It's not locally based, but 100% of the time it's for Meniere's disease, which is like an inner ear issue causing a lot of vestibular issues and vertigo. That community seems to have a really, really strong support group, and most of the time it's because Meniere's is something that is not treatable. And so it's more of like a coping with Meniere's group. So yeah, I definitely will look into more like local chapters and things like that. Thank you.
Any more questions? It looks like Heidi has a referral for you. I can give you a copy of the chat. I had a question. This might be crazy, but I have a neurologist friend, and I'm always volunteering for his crazy brain studies. So I wonder if you could do some sort of study and invite women or men who have suffered from migraines and other conditions that you might be wanting to treat, to say, why don't you join, you know, the study and let us work on you. It might be hard for your practice to do some free care, and then you'd be able to produce the results and probably get some great testimonials if you were actually able to help someone. And then those people could also go back to their other practitioners and say, well, you could fix me, but Olivia, Dr. Did. So is that something you could do?
It definitely sounds like something that I'm interested in. I know especially within the Blair technique, there are a lot of doctors that are conducting their own research, and as a society, we have started to pour a lot of resources and funding into more like clinical trials, because those are really the only studies that get medically recognized. Like case studies and things like that kind of get like thrown aside because there's a lot of not error, but a lot of like variables with that. But it is powerful for the patient side of things, that like from a medical standpoint or from like the medical community standpoint, that case studies are not like really recognized as like a valid, like a way to like, you know, positively say like, yeah, this affected things, but anecdotally patients are really, really into that because they see something similar to what they're going through. So yeah, that's definitely something that I want to do in the near future.
You could actually get some long-term patients in the door that way, right? You do a couple treatments on them, they start to feel better, and then like, oh, okay, I get it now. Now I will pay for maintenance and care. I had one more question, but it's slipping my mind. Oh, do you do anything? I know a lot of chiropractors do stuff with muscle testing and methylation. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with methylation, but I am familiar with muscle testing. So actually we do a form of muscle testing in our office at every visit. It's a specific leg check that we do, and we use that to kind of determine which segment, if people have like multiple misalignments throughout their neck, most of the time it's only going to be one or two that really need to be adjusted on a given day, and so we muscle test for that.
I have a potential contact for you. A woman, she's Dr. J. Dunn, is a doctor out of Florida, and she created My Happy Genes. She used to be a chiropractor, really intense with muscle testing and methylation, and now she can test your DNA and help people live healthier through diet and lifestyle and supplements based on the DNA and what she knows about chiropractic and muscle testing. So she's fascinating, and I'll hook you guys up. Looks like we have one more question, so before you hand it over.
My name is Nancy Boss, and I am a fear and confidence researcher. And I wasn't sure I had anything to add until I heard Lisa's questions. And I realized that having never been to a chiropractor, and you mentioning the quarter-inch drop in the table, that my biggest hesitation is fear. And I would imagine that you run into that as a barrier to patients coming into your door. And then I realized that a lot of the marketing that you've talked about, having the friendly space, appealing to moms, is really skirting the issue of overcoming fears. And then the recommendations that you should have testimonial videos, you should have people saying in the study, oh, after a couple visits, you shouldn't be afraid because this helped me. And so I'm wondering if addressing fear in your marketing directly or being conscious of addressing it indirectly is a part of your strategy, or if you think it would be useful.
Yeah, absolutely, because most people that have never seen a chiropractor before, even if they are like, yeah, it sounds like it would help, but it's kind of terrifying based on the stigma around it and everything. When I was a student, I was very, very hesitant because I was in my chiropractic bubble, and I didn't ever want to badmouth the profession, anything like that. But being in the real world now and in practice, it is absolutely a valid fear that people have. And so I've gotten much more comfortable with addressing it and telling people, like, I understand that you're probably terrified to get your neck adjusted or to get your neck cracked. And that is definitely something that I address with people, especially when they come in and I can see the anxiety on their face and they're closed off and they're looking at the table and they don't like know what to expect. Addressing that first off of like, hey, we do things very differently here. And so that element of fear is very valid, and I'm here to talk you through it, basically.
I just wanted to add that your persona is perfect for that. You are so reassuring that I'm glad that you're tackling that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you so much. So last final question.
Two more
Couple more questions.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Final questions. So the New Mexico State question,
Oh,
red or green?
it's like wine. If it's a red meat, red, and chicken, green.
All right. Very fair. Spoken like a New Mexican. It's so funny. Every time I hear these answers, I remember like me, brand new New Mexico, Christmas, and everybody being like, ugh. And I was like, okay, I just outed myself. And what's the one thing that this community can do for you today?
I would say, the connections that you guys have, whether that's with, the business side of things or, medical-based, people that you know in your life that can help create like a good network referral. Also, keeping in mind that there are alternative solutions to really big neurological disorders and problems. And so when you have people in your life that you love that are struggling, keep that in mind, that there generally is an answer out there. Sometimes it's a little harder to find, but it's out there.
Well, thank you.
Don't really.
All right, once again, it's my pleasure to close this out. Just thinking about one of the things that came up today is fear. So you tell us that people, don't come to chiropractic because they're afraid, or people tell us that they haven't gone because they're afraid. And a lot of people don't do what they really ought to do with their business because they're afraid. And I have some words of inspiration for you, not mine, but there are a fair number of geeks in the audience who will recognize the source. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Okay, who recognizes that? Yeah! Geek! All right, what is it? Frank Herbert Dune. That's right, folks. Get your inspiration where you need it. And I've heard better, more high-power sources of this, including advice given to medical students on graduation, which is that in the medical profession, you're going to see some terrible things. You're going to see some horrible sufferings. There's going to be times when you come home from work in tears and there's no one to talk to. And the advice that they give medical students is do not turn away from the pain. Turn into it and walk through it, which is the same thing that Frank Herbert says. So if there's something standing between you and success, whether it's a health thing that you're afraid of, or whether there's something in business that you have to learn that you're afraid of, the only way to deal with it is to walk right through it, not to try to hide from it. See you next week.